And so we're now recording. So welcome. This is the Insight session that is a chance to preview the business that's coming to the district conference, as well as to engage in really whatever conversation you'd like to engage in with the district board chair, who is Nelda Clarke, who's with us. And I'm just here to support her. No.
Wait a minute.
And I'm glad to. It's a chance for you all to have conversation with both of us with things you might want to know. Nelda's going to open us with prayer in just a minute, and then what we'll do is, if there are specific things you're hoping to hear about tonight, we'll take a moment to make sure we get a list of those things, so that we make sure those get addressed. But we also plan to take some time to walk through the district budget process, the district budget that's proposed, as well as the changes that are proposed to the district bylaws. So that will form our agenda. But first, we're going to begin with a word of prayer. Nelda, I'd be glad for you to lead us in that.
Dear Lord, we come together as family, as church, as friends. We come together to do the work of the Pacific Southwest District of the Church of the Brethren, to do your work. Open our hearts and our minds that we might ask the questions that need to be asked, that we might find the answers we're seeking, that we may come together and know your will for the district at this time in the life of the church. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Well, we'll take a moment, and if you've got a question you'd like to make sure, something you want to make sure you hear about tonight, you can feel free to say that aloud, or you could type it into the chat, either one, but we'll try and keep a list going. Welcome, Brother Anthony and Brother Wilson from Imperial Heights. Good to see you guys. So what are you hoping to maybe hear about tonight, beyond the budget and the bylaws?
I don't know if I can ask this. Is an update on churches that might be leaving the district?
Okay.
It's a tender topic.
No, not a problem at all.
I'd like to hear about Los Banos and the one in Las Vegas, and the churches that are kind of really starting to grow.
And maybe this is an ignorant question. Did we receive as delegates anything online, business items online?
Yeah, you should have received an email that had a link to the business book.
Oh, okay. I'm wondering, we always have book.
Yeah, that went out about 2 weeks ago. Tomorrow, an email will go out with, I'll answer this one since we're right on it. Tomorrow, you'll get an email with the link for the business session on Saturday, and that will have in it kind of a flow of how we're going to do business that day attached to it, as well as a PDF of just the business items.
Okay.
So
thank you.
You should get that again tomorrow, but on the district website, under district conference, you'll find the full business booklet.
Thank you.
So sorry, Connie. Other questions or things you want to make sure you hear about today? All right. Well,
one
go
thing
ahead, Peggy.
I hear about is what's going on in the Pasadena church, and the new people that are coming to help bring leadership and that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. Talk about that. Well, let's start with Catherine's question, and which was which had to do with churches that might be leaving the district. I'll broaden that to say churches that might be leaving the denomination. Nelda, is it okay if I take that one?
You certainly may.
So you may or may not be aware broadly that in 2020, a group that had been meeting who were troubled by directions they saw the Church of the Brethren going, largely around not having as sharp of accountability on issues that they wanted to see accountability on, decided to form a new denomination and break away from the Church of the Brethren. And that group is known as the Covenant Brethren Church, is the name that they have selected. And they have been in existence formally for just over a year, I would say a year and a quarter, and are drawing, as a denomination, drawing some churches that are choosing to leave the Church of the Brethren and choosing to join the Covenant Brethren denominational group. I think from something I had seen, there may be something in the neighborhood of 40 to 45 churches that have, out of the 1,000 Church of the Brethren congregations, that have done that to this point in time. They are strongest in the southeastern, what was the southeastern district. That's where about half of their group comes from. That district really split in half at their district conference in, I think it was 2020. It was, I'm sure, not a pleasant district conference to be a part of, with half staying in the Church of the Brethren and half choosing to leave. In our district, to this point in time, there are no congregations that I am aware of that are looking to depart from the Church of the Brethren and join the Covenant Brethren, or there have been other churches who have left the denomination in some other districts but have no interest in joining the Covenant Brethren. Most of those have just become independent congregations that have done that. And I don't have a good number. I might say the number might be as high as 75 churches in total between the two who have chosen to leave the denomination in that time. What I would say is I hope we have good enough relationships with all of our churches, even a couple of churches that we don't see very much, but I'm at least in occasional contact with folks who are involved in leadership in those places, that I think we have good communication, and we would lean into that. There is a recommended best practices in polity, our guiding line that the district board affirmed back in 2019 or 20, that we would follow that guidance in working with a congregation that would decide that it wanted to go. And that involves several rounds of conversation, a 2-vote process that are separated by some time for departure. And if there is a group that's wanting to go, certainly part of what the district's priority is how do we support any group that is within that group, in that congregation, that doesn't want to leave the Church of the Brethren and would like to stay connected to the Church of the Brethren. So that's where we find ourselves. Catherine, I don't know if that got to what you were wondering about. Okay, very, very good.
Thank you very much.
I think what I'd like to do is let's jump into the business, and Peggy will come back and tell you. I could talk all night about some of what's happening in certain places with new churches and that kind of thing, but let's turn to the business a little bit, and then we'll come back in touch with the Los Banos, Las Vegas, Pasadena, and some other places where things are happening. Does that sound okay to you, Peggy? Okay.
Great.
So I don't know if you have the business booklet with you or not, if obviously Connie doesn't. So I'm going to go ahead, I think, and screen share. This would be Exhibit C. We'll start with budget. And Kim, thanks for that note that there was an email on the 26th of October that had the attachments to all of the business items and the whole booklet. I'm going to screen, if you have your booklet, you can look at page, what page is this?
54.
Page 54,
Oh.
thank you. And would it be helpful to screen share that or no? Okay. So hopefully you're seeing the business booklet at this point in time, and the budget section of that. So in this, we started a couple of years ago. We bring an operating budget and a church planting support budget, which are two different budgets to the district conference. And then for the operating budget, an expense maximum for the following year. So you'll see there it says 2023 operating expense maximum. What we use that for is to have the district conference kind of pre-tell the district board at our recommendation to you that the maximum operating expense should be no higher than this in the future year. So when we come back in, hopefully we're working to do those kinds of things and stay within that. What you have next year is, this is in this 2022 operating budget paragraph, an expense line of $472, almost $473,000. It's a $6,000 increase from what we have been operating at here in 2021. I'm just reading stuff there. You can read that for yourselves. And we believe with loans to congregations being kind of back into a more of a sync level. We had suspended our loans that we had to congregations during the pandemic to help them out. We will see an increase in our income from interest expense and those kinds of things. And we're anticipating a deficit in 2022 of $299,000. And our goal has been to be between right around a $300,000 operating deficit. And I know that can sound alarming and shocking, and it is. In the past, what we just did was we just said we had a balanced budget because we covered it with whatever we make in the operating reserves off of our earnings. That is what we do, but we made a decision a couple of years ago to say, the reality is we don't make an adjustment. If the market's off, we don't suddenly make dramatic cuts to the budget in a given year. We're hoping that over the course of several years, the general trend is upward and will be enough that we can cover that operating loss that's budgeted. And so we've worked at that in that kind of way. Good money in there in partnership funds. A lot of that these days goes to help support some of our mission congregations. These are congregations operating in areas with high levels of poverty in the group that are members of their congregation. And so I think the maximum grant we give to one of those churches is $10,000. It ranges from $4,000 up to $10,000. And in some ways, it's a way of helping make up the offerings, if you will, adding a little bit to the offerings of different folks. There's also money in there for trying new things, for training and support. We spent a lot of money in ministry training and minister support. The pastor spouse retreat is certainly one of those. A lot of money in education of ministers. And Peggy Redmond, who's on this call, is our Nurturing and Credentialing Committee chairperson, who kind of oversees the licensing and ordination process. Norma Sexton, who's here, is a district board member, and she's chair of the Ministry Commission, which is over the NACC. And Jay Irizarry, who's here, is a board member who serves on the Ministry Commission. So we've had two students that we've been helping get through Bethany Theological Seminary. We have 9 students who are in various Spanish language training programs, and 2 or 3 students who are using the Brethren Academy's trim coursework and other things in order to complete their ministry training work. And the district covers at least 75% of the cost of making that happen. We got money in for NYC support and those kinds of things. And the biggest piece of the budget, a little better than half of the budget, is tied up in staff and operations, those kinds of things. As you may or may not know, even since Easter, I've been back out on the road traveling a good deal, getting around to do things. Church planting budget, at the time that we put this together, we have 4 congregations that are working as new church plants. We've got Los Banos, we've got Las Vegas, we've got Waterford, and we've got Pasadena that are all part of that church planting support budget. We've been using money that was from the sale of the Lindsay congregation to do that. I think we will have used all of that money, which was about $120,000 by the end of this year. And then we'll start to pull some funds from money that's in the Ministry and Improvement Fund for church planting. So that was a lot of talking on my part. I'm glad to, and Nelda and I would be, Nelda, you want to add anything? And then I'd say we'd be glad to take questions you might have, and I can go down, we can go into the line items of the budget. You kind of see a summary piece there in front of us.
No, I think you did well.
So wonderings, questions, things you're thinking about, want to ask about?
I just want to comment that your explanation of the coverage of the deficit is what our church committee fumbled and stressed and fumbled around with, and we said the same thing. Our deficit is going to be covered by hopeful earnings from our sale money.
Yeah, I mean, this year has been, I mean, I do not understand the stock market. I know, Tim, you and I've had some conversation last year at conference around what is this deficit and where does it come from? I mean, the money we have invested across funds at the Brethren Foundation this year, our gain on our principal fund has, on paper, has been through the end of October is just above $750,000 of investment gain. The Stewards Commission actually pulled $500,000 of that money out of the market in February, just figuring that was enough to probably cover us for 2 years of deficit if we needed to have it. And so we pulled it out to have it tucked away for safekeeping. And the market has continued to grow dramatically. I mean, the stewards made a cost benefit decision. If we pulled $500,000 out and the market went up, we had about $4 million in the market at that point. We pulled $500,000 out. If the market had, on that $500,000, if the market went up by 10%, we would have missed out on $50,000 of growth. But if the market fell by 10% in that time, we would have lost $400,000. And so that was kind of the rationale of saying, let's pull it. We know we're going to be running into deficit, and this gives us the ability to essentially put in the bank the deficit for this year and the deficit for 2022 at a minimum kind of thing. So we also took some money out of the Tucson there. So we had one of our funds we have is money related to the sale of the Tucson property that's being held through 2027 for hopeful future church planting in Tucson. And that money had grown as well. We pulled about $225,000 out of the market just to kind of protect some principal out of that fund, and it is up on the year as well. That fund has about $700,000 in it. So, yeah. Other questions, wonderings, thoughts? And here we moving slow, and then it moved really fast. Sorry about that.
Just one thing that I noticed, it doesn't say that the budget is an action item in the booklet.
It should. It says right here, this where it says policy board is the adoption of the 22 operating budget and the 22 church planting support budget as presented. So there's the, right here, it says action item underneath it. That action item under where it says
The
church
two
planting
together.
is
Okay.
the two together.
Okay, I was looking for them separate. Thank you.
Well, I know the money's an exciting part of things, so we don't have to stay here any longer than we need to. So I'm going to turn to Nelda. I'm going to stop screen sharing, and let's move. We can move to talking a little bit about the bylaws stuff. Are you comfortable? I mean, I can screen share again, but can you talk a little bit about that, Nelda? Or you?
Yeah, well, I can give an overview to start with that. As most of you probably are aware, sometimes changes happen in the way an organization operates. And those changes happen before the bylaws get changed, or it's recognized that the bylaws need change to be able for the organization to stay up with what's currently required. And that's some of the changes that happened this year as we went through. We started initially with looking at a couple of positions and where they serve and whether those were appropriate or not. And then we realized that there were some others that just did not continue as they should. On page 58 at the bottom begins the changes. And you'll see that there's a strike through on what's being taken out of these. And boldface, and I don't know if it's color or not because I have black and white.
It's green if you have a color version.
If what is added to these. So the duties of the moderator changed slightly because we don't have a shalom team at this point. And don't see the need for that at this point. Also that the moderator does not serve on the board of directors of Brethren Hillcrest Homes anymore. And so that's on Hillcrest's decision that they would not have that position, and therefore it needs to come out of our bylaws as well. And in duties of the moderator elect, the idea was that they may assist, just simply saying that they may assist the moderator as asked, rather than spelling that out.
The moderator is a ex officio member on every committee of the district, and that has been at times a bit of a burden for moderators through the years, and so we're not removing that as a position, but we're saying the moderator could ask the moderator elect to serve on a committee in their behalf, kind of a thing, to hopefully reduce some of the workload.
Yeah. The clerk in the past has been asked to be the secretary for the executive board as well, which made another, generally speaking, 12 meetings that she or he had to make to attend and do minutes on. And it was decided that the executive board could find ways to keep their own minutes, and that the the clerk therefore would not serve on that committee. And see, and may act. Oh, and both parts of with the clerk is related to, I mean, the recording secretary is taking out that executive board responsibility.
Jumped over section 3 there, Nelda, which this is on page 59. And we also are putting in California corporate law allows us to conduct virtual meetings as long as it's not stated that you can't do that. But our attorney advised that it would be good to at least indicate to clean that up and say, yes, we explicitly do allow. And by this, we're actually allowing what our plan was for this district conference, which would be a hybrid format as well, where you could be present, whether the meeting could have people who were physically in a space and people joining virtually, and all of those people would count together towards making the quorum for that. But this clarifies who can be counted.
Yeah, sorry about that. Since I'm black and white, the green doesn't stand out for me. On page 60, then, the district conference program committee is being changed from 7 to 5 members, and that includes the moderator-elect, and 3 elected members, and that the board chair is an invited guest without vote. Members elected. Oh yeah, 1 member is elected each year. And then the board chair is an invited guest without vote. And instead of being on that committee, and there's no longer a president of Pacific Southwest Women. So having her, that designation no longer made sense. And at the same time, taking out the youth coordinator that was made sense, so that that committee is much smaller, but they felt like they could still get the work done with the smaller size of committee.
And until about until not too many years ago, it was a 3-person committee. In 2012, it had been increased. So
it's going back to where it was. And then in section 6, Board of Administration membership consists of 13 instead of 17 members with 3-year terms, and then 3 youth or young adult members for 1-year terms. The moderator-elect, and treasurer serve as ex officio members on the Board of Administration.
as voting members, they'll have votes
Yeah.
in that meeting. So.
And then it's just highlighting that the treasurer, taking out that the treasurer is not a without vote member, but rather is a with vote member, and that the mission and ministry board members that's from at the national level that are from our district serve as ex officio members on the policy board without vote. I think that finishes page 60. Moving
I had a
over.
request to screen share, so I just threw this up on the screen. Sorry
Okay.
about that.
That's okay, thank you. On page 61, we have that the policy board meets at least 4 times per year, it had been 3 times, but we've really been doing 4 times when you count the district conference meeting for reorganization. And they had to have a retreat every year. And with COVID and with Zoom opportunities, most of our meetings have been Zoom in the past 2 years. Having a retreat did not make sense. But the 3 meetings to define, the 3 meetings that are held are to define and review the overall district direction and program, and to review the actions of the executive board. And then the meetings may occur in person, virtually, or in hybrid format. And members are can counted towards quorum with either in person or virtual participation. And then no, not lastly, but next is the Board of Administration, board committees. Those committees are, we removed the committees, just simply saying the board can appoint committees and task group as needed to assist with the work of the district. When the assignment is completed, the committee or task group is dismissed, rather than some of these have been said to be ongoing committees, and they really have not had a response, anything to do, or it's been very difficult to find someone that would do a non-directed task or a broad task that doesn't have direction, such as the Shalom team, to try and have somebody serve on that just because we're supposed to have a committee and there's not a need for one at the moment. So, and finally, on page 62, the relationship with other, or under relationship with other organizations, it talks about the 2 camps, and then it removes Brethren Hillcrest Homes, Camp Laverne, and University of Laverne as having elected individuals, nominees for those boards from us. That's not required in their bylaws, and therefore we can't require them to to accept our nominations. But we're always welcome. Everyone's always welcome to make nominations for committees like that, or boards like that, but not required. And the nominating committee finally is not going to be required to fill positions for the Brethren Homes or the University of Laverne again, making those all consistent with earlier understanding of what's happening in those organizations. So that's a brief overview of the bylaws changes. If you have questions or comments, wonder why we're doing something, or anything like that, feel free to ask. Russ will be glad to answer. No, we will be glad to answer your questions.
I can move around to some other portion if you've got a question you want us to bring it where you can see it more easily.
Yeah, I don't know how long it's been that the district has not appointed a member to the Board of Trustees of Laverne, but
I know that has not happened for a time.
Yeah.
And what about at Brethren Hillcrest?
The same has been true in both of these places. So the University of Laverne does require in their bylaws a certain amount of Brethren people to be on their board, but they use a process of they have a process by which they go out and look for people in certain areas to do that. Hillcrest, the same kind of thing. In fact, Hillcrest bylaws are coming to the board of directors the week out next week when they have their board meeting for some revisions, but those require that at least 6 of the board members be members of the Church of the Brethren at Hillcrest. Right now, and it'll be interesting to see, the district executive is an ex officio member of the Hillcrest board. That may be changing in this, but in their revisions. But there are requirements in both places that they do that, but they, for longer than I've been the district executive, have had other means by which they call those Brethren people out.
Thank you.
Other questions or wonderings? And largely it was to reduce some workload issues on various folks who are serving, and also there is a reduction by 4 in the number of people called from throughout the district to serve on the board. But I think we feel like based on the size of the district, the number of churches in the district, we're working. We'll be able to work fine, and we'll be okay with that. So. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. Here's hoping that when we have our conversation at district meeting, it won't be as glazed over, but it will be received fairly well by folks. I know these are not the most exciting things to do, and when you have to do them in your own congregations, I know it's not particularly exciting, but they are a part of what it means to do some of that work. So. Those are the key business items. We also have elections that are happening. The ballot is a part of what's in there. It is essentially a slate that is coming from the district nominating committee, as it has been for the last many, many years. So that will be coming, and there are minutes from our last meeting to be worked out and approved. So. Well,
Russ,
yes, go ahead, Deb.
just out of curiosity, in this time post quarantine, there are a lot of it's hard to get people who want to go back to work. And I'm wondering, is the district noticing any of that? Are you having trouble getting people to participate on boards or on committees? Or is that about the same as it's always been?
I would say it's about the same as it has been, at least for the last 10 to 15 years. I think in some ways life has gotten a little bit easier because of the advent of Zoom. I mean, at a district level, we were using Zoom 3 years prior to the pandemic happening to do things. We have tried to keep business meetings as much as possible, but the district budget, without going back over and looking to be 100% sure, but we would meet in person 3 times a year, and covering the cost of travel to bring people together, we would, and hotels, for them to stay in and all of that, we were spending $16,000 to $18,000 a year just to have the board come together 3 times. And it was always, people having to take time off of work. Well, now, we do hope to return to having at least one face-to-face board meeting a year, which might cost $3,000 to $5,000. But the commissions and the committees all meet by Zoom in between those meetings. The nurturing and credentialing committee that does licensing and ordination, we would like to do those interviews in person, but the pandemic made us take that work online, and it worked. Does that mean we still wouldn't rather do those interviews in person when we can? Yeah, we would. And we're going to try and get back to some of that. But I think Zoom has been a helpful thing as far as some of that kind of work goes, and getting people involved. And I do think the proposed changes that are going to, I mean, the board chair has quite a bit of meetings to do, and they were going to the ministry commission meeting. Well, the ministry chair is at that meeting as well and is reporting. So felt like a lot of duplication of efforts going on in different places. So I'm going to shift, if it's all right with folks.
Norma, did you have a question or comment?
There was a comment on page 52 of the booklet. It's the ballot background information, and under PSWD Board of Administration at Large Representatives, that line then says vote for 5, a 3-year term, but then on the actual ballot we only have 3. So I think that's a carryover from an old format. I just make a point of that.
That's good to know.
Page 52.
52.
52.
5-2. Ballot background in the printed page.
Oh,
52.
the ballot is correct in what it says, but
Right.
the background sheet says
Right.
vote for 5, and there's only
3.
3 people listed there. Thank you. We'll make sure that Cheryl shares that. Pay attention to what it says on the ballot, not what it says on the background sheet. So,
I understand.
so, well, Peggy asked a question. Anything else on any of that, or else I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening in some church planting, new church work in the district, if that's okay. I'm going to screen share here. So Los Banos is about an hour south of Modesto, driving wise. And back when Sarah Haldeman Scar was the moderator, which I think was 2017, we began a conversation with a group that had connections to the Príncipe de Paz congregation out of Santa Ana, who were starting a house church and were looking to be a part of a denomination. And we had some good meetings and good conversation. That group was growing well. They were leasing a space that was probably 350 square feet. They just leased it for when they were having meetings, and they were putting about 50 to 60 people in there every time they came together, and there was no room for children's stuff or anything like that. This was as they grew, as we came alongside, and this is the Central Agape and Acción group. And we made a determination as a district that we would use some of our resources to help fund a mortgage to help them get into a space of their own. In the fall of 2019, we purchased a building in Los Banos in a commercial property that, as you can see in this picture here, you see suites B and C. B had 2 doctors' offices in it. C had never been developed. And suites D and E on the backside of this building are tenants of ours. Suite D is a mortuary, an African-American owned mortuary. And next to that is a counseling agency that works with families, particularly with young people who are having emotional and behavioral issues. And so those are 2 tenants that we have. And we began a process as we headed into the pandemic to renovate and do stuff. The picture you see here is from this last Sunday. In September, late September, we received our certificate of occupancy for the Central Agape Church building. And they began, it took a little while to do some of the getting their sound system installed and chairs moved in and some other things done, but they began meeting there just the end of October. Last Sunday I was with them. It was their second Sunday in the building. But C is the worship space. B has classrooms, a common area, offices, an office, and the bathrooms in it. So I'll give you a couple of pictures here. You can see their logo there, Centro Agape and Acción. This is the lobby. This over here is that door under the B sign that you saw. And one of the things that they're about to start in the next week or two is a morning coffee on weekday mornings before you go to work. The pastors will be there, and if you want to come and have prayer before you and a cup of coffee before you go to work, they're getting ready to start a ministry doing that kind of connection kind of thing. This Bienvenidos counter is when they were getting the countertops, the guy had one piece left and was like, oh, I'll make you a good deal on it. So they got it, and those are this is a rolling piece that has cabinets on the backside, so they can move it around wherever they want in that room and do things. Restrooms are over here. Classrooms are back here. There's a meeting room / crying room that has a window out into the sanctuary. So moms with young ones can be in there and still hear the service and see the service, but if they want to. And it's probably one of our best technologically wired buildings because, hey, you're building you're doing it now from the ground up. There is this monitor in the lobby can show what's happening in the sanctuary. All of it can, there are monitors in the classrooms, there's monitors in the sanctuary, and those can all be controlled from the sound room or individually. There's a look in the sanctuary space. They are set right now for about 100 people. We're rated for 150 for occupancy in the sanctuary space. So that's the space for worship. This is some those chairs aren't the permanent chairs they're going to have in the children's room, but they have them now. And this is one of the 2 children's Sunday school classrooms. The 2 rooms, actually, the door's not in yet. That's the one piece yet to be finished on the building, but there's a collapsible door that will be between the 2 rooms. So if they need a bigger space, they can have it, but otherwise they can divide into 2 different rooms. And most of the young people in the congregation are bilingual English-Spanish, and so as you can see, you get a lot of English and Spanish in the decorations there. This is from worship. This is the son-in-law of the pastors, Arrigo and Margie Berriman are the pastors. This is Giovanni Oseguera, who is the primary worship leader. They were singing to track music this week. The first Sunday, they actually had folks on the drums and on keyboard, and they're hoping that will be a regular part of things. When the pandemic hit in March of 2020, they were pulling on an average Sunday 55 to 60 people in a midweek prayer service, getting 35 to 40. About 25 to 35. They had not met until last Sunday, until the 31st of October. They had not met in person since the pandemic started. They had been Facebook live streaming. The pastor's home has a permanent green screen hanging on a wall now, and they were live streaming from there and trying and working to keep connected. They have had right around 60 to 65, both of the first 2 Sundays back in their worship services. And it looks like most of their folks have stayed with them through that. And families that had said, when you have space for kids, let me know. And last Sunday, they had children's ministry for the first time on Sunday morning. So this over here this is the pastor's office here. So there's a door from the pastor's office into the sanctuary and the lobby. This is that crying room we talked about, and also can be used as a meeting room. And then this is the sound room here behind this window. So one of the members, part of the equipo, the leadership group in the congregation, for the offering. And there's Rigo, one of the two pastors there. So I'll stop screen sharing and kind of come back. They are excited. They have great energy for what they are going to be able to do for mission and for reaching their community. Rigo is already talking about when they'll need to start the second service because they're going to be too full to fit everyone in. I hope I have as much energy at 70 as Rigo has at 70. And all. He is, they are excited to have a base of operation and to continue to grow. And they are a fellowship with the district conference in 2019 in Arizona. They were moved to the fellowship status from project, which means they have delegates at district conference. We actually will file by the end of the years their incorporation papers and get them self-established. It's been I had to do some work on their bylaws and those kinds of things in order to get them properly started, but we're very close, and that will move forward before the end of this year. They're looking forward to the children's ministry, their service ministries of staying in touch and supporting families that are really, really key and important. They are a church plant that we have given not a huge amount of financial direct dollar support to. They pre-pandemic were probably average offering was about $3,000 a month. It's been down some in the pandemic, but we're still getting the final numbers on what construction costs, but they will be the first church to receive funds out of the Growth from the Ashes money that we have, which is the money from the Paradise Church that we have set aside to help growing congregations who need to expand their facilities or purchase facilities to do that. And they can, there's a whole bunch of guidelines, but essentially about $250,000 of that $1.6 million will go to cover costs of construction that we've been doing. They'll probably end up with about a $500,000 mortgage that we will provide some support to them in paying out of the church planting money for the first 2 to 3 years. But I fully suspect that they will be well on their way to they are already self-sustaining, and I expect that will continue to grow as they're in their space. So that's a little bit about Los Banos. Questions about Centro Agape and Acción.
What's the official name of the fellowship?
The official name is Centro Agape and Acción. So
Okay.
the center of God's love in action.
So you're not using Los Banos as a name because that's not a Spanish word. It's
No, it's not. and they really don't like getting introduced very much because everybody wants to make it a tilde and call it Los Baños, which doesn't translate very well. So no, they are Centro Agape and Acción.
And do you have a ballpark range of what it cost to buy the property and do what they had to do?
Right. So the district spent $1 million, just shy of $1.1 million on the property. So the half therein is worth about $550,000, and our renovation costs are probably right about $250,000 to $300,000. So it's about, if you put that together, it's about $850,000.
Probably lower property costs there than Pomona.
Yeah, yes. But part of it was looking and finding stuff. You will not imagine how many properties they and we looked at along the way. But I would see something and I think would be perfect, and it wouldn't happen. And they'd say, it's not where God wants us. I'm like, but it would be so. It's not where God wants us. So, yeah. And that, like I said, the whole building was $1 million. So, I mean, the district will maintain ownership of the other half of the building. And that's an investment of ours that we've got rental income coming in off of. And so net of everything, that produces about $30,000 to $35,000 a year of revenue off of the rental property for the district, which part of what we were targeting is we needed to get at least a 5 to 6% return on our investment. So it's about a $500,000 investment, and we're looking to net 30 to 35,000 a year profit out of that after covering our expenses as being the landlords and those kinds of things. So it's a different thing that we're doing, but it seems to be working for us. And the other nice piece is those leases have expiration clauses on them. And so if 5 years from now, when the counseling agency's lease is up, if we're needing more classroom space, we can push those walls through and move into that space. If we need more sanctuary space and the mortuary's lease is up, not that we're looking to push them out, but we have the ability to double their size or steps towards that as time goes forward. A couple of other pieces that I can just tell you about. The Las Vegas group. I will say to you, church planting, doing church period in a pandemic has not been easy. I think many of you know that very, very well. Church planting in a pandemic is really, really hard. I'll start with Waterford. So we have, when the Waterford church closed in the beginning of 2016, rather than sell that property, we as a district decided we would probably never have a property in Waterford again if we sold it. And so we felt like it was worth keeping the church building and the parsonage to see if God might give us a ministry there. And it seemed really likely that that could be a Spanish language ministry. In this fall of 2019, Florecita Merlos and her husband and their youngest daughter, who is 19 or 20, moved from their home in Fontana. They were part of the Principe de Paz congregation, and they moved into the parsonage in Waterford, began to try and meet people and to do some organizing. And 5 months into that, we were in a pandemic, and we said, no, you can keep in touch with people, but don't do that. I will say, Brethren Disaster Ministries during the pandemic offered congregations the ability to get disaster response grants to meet human needs in their communities. And all of our Spanish language congregations got at least one, some got two of those grants. We had a couple of our English language congregations get those grants as well from Brethren Disaster Ministries. And so Florecita was able to stay in contact and really helped about 7 or 8 families pretty significantly with some financial assistance to cover rent, to cover food, some medical bills, those kinds of things out of this money that Brethren Disaster Ministries made available throughout the denomination to congregations to do things. They finally began to meet in earnest this August, and they have been holding Sunday services there since the beginning of August in the building. Yeah, so part of the support there is we cover right now, the district's covering the utilities for the building and for the parsonage. That's part of our church planting support there, but we'll now begin a clock that will be to move them towards growing and beginning to take on those expenses on their own. But Florecita had a heart for church planting, and she's a SEBA student, which is one of the Spanish language training programs. She has completed all of her 14 courses, and there's some practical ministry activities she has to do. And she is about halfway through doing those. And she finished about another 10 or 11 of those to do, and she will graduate and then come for ordination to the Nurturing and Credentialing Committee. But Jay Irizarry is working with her. Jay does some website work, and is helping her get a website up so she can have that out there to the community, some stuff like that. So that's what's happening in Waterford. In Las Vegas, Luz Roman is the pastor. Just before the pandemic, they found a new facility to rent from. I will say one of the challenges in Las Vegas has been we have not found a space that they could have as just their own. And so they have been subletting from other churches in their existence, which in some ways is a nice thing, but the church that has the main lease or owns the space keeps adding other groups right on top of them. And so it becomes really, really challenging to try and have much beyond your worship services. Again, they did a lot of work from their sanctuary, but just with 3 or 4 folks there streaming, as many of you had pastors who did that kind of work this last year to do stuff. That group probably is about 18 to 25 on an average Sunday, a good mix of ages of folks. And we're actually in conversation with them right now about trying to find a space that really could be their own as a rental space. The interesting piece, when we bought the building in Los Banos, it was more affordable to buy a building than it was to lease space, the way things were set up. And Las Vegas, that was the case a couple of years ago as well. Right now, real estate is through the roof. Connie, you know that. I have a feeling because of looking and going up. And so right now, renting space is a more potentially lucrative way to go as far at a cost level. And so I will tell you, I didn't think I would know this much about real estate when I became the district executive 7 years ago, but we've learned a few things along the way and been involved in quite a few real estate transactions and supporting them. Jerry handled so much of the work on behalf of Pomona Fellowship, but I learned a few things along the way with you on that one too, Jerry. So, but they're working at stuff, and we hope that we'll continue to see good things there. Pasadena, just about the time the pandemic hit, right before that, a young couple from Columbia who were at Fuller Seminary in Pasadena had gotten connected with Elizabeth Rowan in the Pasadena congregation, and they were looking for a new church to connect to, in part because Adriana, the wife of the couple, wanted to be in ministry in the church where they had been working, where Juan Pablo had been serving, wouldn't recognize women in ministry. And they got to talking with Elizabeth Rowan, who obviously is a woman in ministry, and began to explore the Church of the Brethren and said, yeah, we'd like to try and start something here to do that. In the meantime, a friend of theirs from seminary is a young woman from Chile, Fernanda Navarrete. And Fernanda was interested in joining them. She actually had been working in a church that was very clear that women could do work in the church, but they couldn't be ministers in the church. And she was feeling a call to do ministry as well. So the 3 of them are licensed. They are the leadership team of the congregation. Juan Pablo has an MDiv from Fuller. Fernanda, the Chilean woman, has an MA and has done a supervised ministry experience and some stuff. She's a graduate. And Adriana is just beginning her coursework at Fuller now. They both, Fernanda and Juan Pablo, Elizabeth worked in the Pasadena church to get them R1 visas so that they could stay and do ministry work, which was a learning process for us to go through. The process kept taking longer and being delayed. And the good news was they didn't actually file the paperwork until early 2021 for the visa. And R1 visas suddenly in 2021 became an easier thing to get approved than they had been the last couple of years prior to that. So they have, I think that's a 2-year visa, and then renews, and they can work and stuff. Juan Pablo and Adriana have 2 young children who are joint US and Colombian citizens. The Pasadena church with the pandemic went online. They were small as it was. Most of the folks at Pasadena are not. Some people moved totally out of the area to be closer to where they had children. Some said, have family that has said, we're just not sending you out anymore in this, and those kinds of things. They were a group of about 10 or 11 on a good Sunday, and Elizabeth is ready to retire. So the English language ministry at Pasadena will likely at the end of this year, early next year, come to its end. And this church project, Conexión Pasadena, they have been using social media to try and engage the community. They began meeting on Zoom and building a group of folks. They then moved this spring to meeting in a park near the Pasadena congregation and gathering outdoors there. And they began the work then of renovating the chapel at the Pasadena church into a more contemporary looking space for them to gather for worship, and began worshiping in that space in September of this year. So they are coming along, and they have a core group of about 5 others who are working with them to do ministry as kind of a leadership group there. So, and the 3 ministers are also taking through the SEBA program occasional courses that are related to Brethren theology, Brethren history, Brethren polity, and organization, those kinds of things. And they'll need to get to a district conference in person, an annual conference in person, those kinds of things that we require before we will bring them for ordination. So those are some of the things happening there. I think the other piece I would just say that's an exciting piece that's on the move is the Circle of Peace congregation in Peoria, Arizona, had been to 2 services because they had outgrown their worship space prior to the pandemic. They continued to grow. In fact, there's an insight session going on tonight about just some of the things they learned in the craziness of the pandemic and about doing outdoor worship. And those kinds of things. They are now back inside their building because summer in Arizona was a little hot to do worship outdoors. So they have a 9 o'clock masked and distance service, a 10:30 mask optional, and sitting a little closer together. And that second service is then also live streamed out to folks. And they continue, they're actually kind of developing, there's an online community that's really committed to the congregation as well. They had a lot of growth with the outdoor service because a lot of places had just gone back inside. They were outdoors, they were on their front lawn and had people seeing them and doing that. But they are in the process of planning for the room that they worship in has an 8-foot ceiling and is they can put 100 people in it, but it's pretty tight at 100 people. And I think Easter before the pandemic, they had 227 in worship that Sunday that they were spreading out. So they are in the process of exploring adding a worship space sanctuary that would hold around 350. Have some outdoor space as well where they could do worship and do some things when weather allows. And the district board has been staying alongside them in that conversation. And I think the sticker shock and commitment time is going to come very soon. But it's exciting to see they were blessed right before the pandemic with $250,000 from another congregation, that big church in that area that said, we can't reach all of the churches in the West Valley of Phoenix. We're going to bless 10 churches with an offering and make us a proposal. So they put a proposal. They were one of the churches asked to do that. So we could use $250,000 because we're going to need to grow, and we know our district will give us a matching $250,000. That church ended up bringing in, I think, $4.5 million in the Christmas offering, covered all of the needs, and then are still giving money to other ministries in that valley to make things happen. But a couple of other things have come in as well, and some other possibilities. And so we're excited as to what the next year or two may hold for that congregation. I probably talked too much. What questions have you got? What do you want to know?
That congregation is English speaking, isn't it?
It is an English speaking congregation. Yep. I talk about the church planting right now. Work that we're doing is with our Spanish, has been in the Spanish language community, but we have some exciting things happening in lots of our English language congregations as well. And I think Circle of Peace may be the one seeing the greatest growth. The Restoration LA congregation has a vital ministry and reaches into that community and continues to grow. They're kind of landlocked. They couldn't build another building if they wanted to on their space. But I've been impressed with how they have worked to repurpose and refresh things and make more room. Well, a couple of things as we come to the end of our time together tonight. You will be receiving, you should have today received links for the worship services on Friday night and Saturday if you had signed up for them. We will be live streaming those services. So the services will be live. Friday night will be in the Glendale congregation. If you want to join us in person at 7 o'clock, drive to Glendale, put on a mask, and feel free to come on in and be a part of the congregation there. On Saturday evening at 6 o'clock, we will be at the Principe de Paz congregation. And the same thing, you're welcome to come down to Santa Ana. We'll probably finish business by 4:30. That's at least the hope, to give leadership a chance to drive from Glendora down to Santa Ana and be there by 6 o'clock to be a part of things. But those will also be streamed. Saturday night service, you'll probably, unless you're bilingual, you'll probably want to use the Zoom link, because our two preachers that evening are Thomas Dowdy from Imperial Heights and Becky Zapata from Principe de Paz. And Becky will be preaching in Spanish, and there will be translation to English in the Zoom. If you want to hear what she's saying, if your Spanish isn't up to sticking with her. So we're excited about that. Tomorrow you'll get links for the business session, and you'll get links if you're signed up for the ministers and leaders professional growth event that's on Friday. You'll get those links tomorrow. But business, we will start promptly at 9. Feel free to be in a little bit before that. And we're excited with the business we've got, reports that we'll hear, and then the plenary session in the afternoon. The district board has been working at what does it mean for us to become and really live into being a multicultural district. And Darla Deerdorf, who is a Church of the Brethren woman who does work around the world in developing multicultural competency, the ability to be someone who can appreciate and work within multicultural settings and contexts and move in those spaces, has worked with the district board, and she'll be with us in the afternoon to lead us in an exercise called Story Circles together. And we hope you'll plan to be there, and there'll be a chance, one, to get to know some other people in the district and in some sharing, but also to work on developing the skills that will help us all grow in our ability to connect with each other. Anything else for the good of the cause this evening? Well, I'm going to take one more minute and say, hey, a couple of years ago, district conference, we approved the Ministry and Improvement Fund. We got $1.3 million. And that money is available to churches in different kinds of ways. One of those is up to $20,000, not a matching thing if you need to do repairs or improvements. Several of the churches I see here have tapped into some of those funds already, but others have not. And encourage you to be thinking when you have a major need. There is a $20,000 fund there available for each church to use to do that and to reach out to that. We did, and Linda Hart, if you're still here, you may be interested in knowing this, but we did just decide that the 2 camps of the district will be eligible as well. Pam, Phil's work I saw this week is they're going to put $20,000 worth of roofs on, new roofs on up at Camp Peaceful Pines, but we just made that decision this week to expand the camps back to the camp. So we'll be letting Camp Laverne know that is available as well. But beyond the facility stuff, there is money to help grow youth ministry in your church or to get your youth to participate in things like National Youth Conference coming up this next year and Christian Citizenship Seminar, other brethren kinds of things. There are funds available. That's all on the district website. There's also funds there for leadership development, and there's a couple of ways that's being used. One, several churches this year were part of a Future Church Summit and some ongoing coaching that has helped them work on action plans to move forward. And we're going to continue to work at offering events that meet needs of congregations and help train not just pastors, but beyond the pastor into lay leadership, into working at things like children's ministry or online worship or outreach or different kinds of things. But we're going to be continuing to work at offering those and encouraging churches to be a part of those. And not just one-time events, but ongoing support to help them move forward out of those. And then there is a significant chunk of money that is available for churches who are trying to start new ministry of some kind. You can get up to $10,000 a year, up to $25,000 total to support a project over a 3-year period. It could be an outreach that it's not just money to give to someone else who's doing outreach, but something that your congregation is hands-on going to be working at trying to develop and do as a ministry. So if you've got interest in any of those ideas for anything there, you can always give me a call, send me an email, and we're glad to talk and help you form a plan and put something together. Last thing I want to say is this is the last time Nelda will be leading this event. Nelda's 6 years on the district board ends, and she has served us the last 5 years as your district board chair. And she has worked long and hard and done really, really well. And we are greatly appreciative of the work that she has done for us. So thank you, Nelda.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thanks all for popping in. You'll get an evaluation form, and we will look forward, if we don't see you at another insight session tomorrow, we'll look forward to seeing you in business on Saturday. So have a good night.
Good night.
Hey, Russ,
Thank you.
Hey, Russ, you got 1 minute?